Crime, and more specifically murder, have always been a regrettably consistent element of the human experience. A couple of quotes I think are relevant as it relates to the story today. The deviant and the conformist are creatures of the same culture, inventions of the same imagination. And we are all capable of becoming something monstrous. Today we take a look at the story of Gypsy Rose Blancharde and her mother Dee Dee. Gypsy's mother falsely claimed that her daughter was suffering from different illnesses throughout her life, until Gypsy, controlling a puppet on a string, orchestrated the murder of Dee Dee Blancharde in 2015. Welcome to 10-Minute Murder, brief and bingeable true crime. I'm Joe, that's my name, I'm the host, and thank you for joining today. If you happen to be wondering where I get the subjects, the cases, the stories, whatever you hear on this show, it's from you, listening. Very rarely do I talk about one that is just interesting to me, so I decide to do it. I do it every now and then, and I did it early on in the life of 10-Minute Murder, and I think we can both agree that it's better now than it was then. Also, back then, I was trying to be more serious, which is the opposite of how the real me acts. The way you hear me talk, especially during this part of the podcast, is how I normally am. Fortunately or unfortunately. Anyway, I got sidetracked. But the point of me saying that is that if you have a story in mind that you would like for me to talk about on this podcast, the best way and easiest way for me to keep up with it is email, joe@10minutemurder.com. You can also send me a message on Facebook or Instagram. I get those too, but the list of messages I'm wading through there, it's thick AF. And I have trouble differentiating between the messages that aren't requesting a story and messages that are requesting a story. So they get kind of jumbled up. But if you send it in an email, you can put in the subject line whatever story that is that you want me to cover. Makes it easier for me. Cool? Cool. Before we get going with your story today, this is your reminder to subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts, probably where you're listening right now. Hit subscribe and never miss another episode. And connect with 10-Minute Murder on social media. Links are in the show notes of this episode, as well as at 10minutemurder.com. Now to today's story. Dee Dee Blancharde made health claims throughout Gypsy Rose's childhood, leading to a string of dire diagnoses. Diagnoses? Whatever the right one is, just pretend I said that. And it included invasive treatments. Gypsy wasn't genuinely ill, though. Her mother had thoroughly researched different diseases, kept binders of information, and made up her daughter's symptoms. For attention, financial gain, or both. It really isn't clear. According to experts, Dee Dee's behavior was caused by the mental illness Munchausen syndrome by proxy. In turn, Gypsy pretended to be sick and played her part in Dee Dee's make-believe story. Only until Gypsy became tired of the charade and conspired for an internet partner to kill Dee Dee in 2015 did the truth about her and her mother come to light. When Dee Dee claimed that her daughter, Gypsy Rose, who was born in 1991, had sleep apnea, Gypsy Rose was just a newborn. Later, when she was 8 years old, Dee Dee diagnosed Gypsy herself with leukemia and muscular dystrophy and needed a wheelchair and a feeding tube. Seizures, asthma, hearing, and visual impairments were among those several health issues that Dee Dee mentioned about her little Gypsy Rose. Gypsy had to sleep with a breathing machine and was given a long list of prescription drugs as a result of Dee Dee's lies. She actually underwent surgical treatments as well, including operations on her eyes and the excision of her salivary glands. Gypsy's teeth were removed when they started to rot, possibly as a result of her medications or the fact that she lacked salivary glands. Or maybe it was neglect, possibly a combination of all of those. Gypsy could actually walk, didn't require a feeding tube, and did not have cancer. Gypsy was bald, but only because her mother shaved her head and left her looking like she was knocking on death's door. According to experts, Munchausen syndrome by proxy, also known as facetious disorder imposed on another, caused her to fabricate her daughter's illness in order to gain sympathy and attention for caring for a sick child. Gypsy's diagnosis frequently yielded ambiguous or contradictory results from medical examinations, but Dee Dee would just quit visiting those doctors who questioned her daughter's conditions. Many of Gypsy's caretakers, an alarming number of doctors, agreed with Dee Dee's wishes. Dee Dee actually had some nursing experience which allowed her to accurately describe symptoms. She also occasionally administered Gypsy medication that would mimic various conditions. It also helped that Dee Dee was a pleasant and personable person and appeared to be very devoted to her daughter's care. Dee Dee told Gypsy to keep quiet and not volunteer any information during these doctor visits because she was always the one giving Gypsy's facetious medical history. And I know what you're asking. What about Gypsy Rose's father? Well, she had one. His name is Rod Blancharde, and he and Dee Dee were no longer together. And Dee Dee told him that Gypsy had a chromosomal abnormality, which was the cause of many of her health problems. He didn't know any better, so he praised Dee Dee for her selfless attention to their daughter. Dee Dee decided to leave the area that they had been living in when some of her relatives noticed that Gypsy did not appear to require a wheelchair, and they asked, "What's up with that?" In order to move from Louisiana to Missouri in 2005, Dee Dee concocted a plan to claim to be victims of Hurricane Katrina and received help. Dee Dee used this Hurricane Katrina lie to also explain why she didn't have medical records verifying all of these illnesses that she claimed Gypsy Rose was suffering from when they moved to Missouri. Gypsy Rose and Dee Dee relocated to a new house in Springfield, Missouri in 2008. It was constructed by Habitat for Humanity and included a wheelchair ramp and was painted pink. Additionally, Gypsy Rose and Dee Dee enjoyed privileges including charity-sponsored trips to Disney World and various concerts. Dee Dee basked in the admiration that she received for being such a devoted caregiver the entire time. Gypsy visited a neurologist in Missouri when she was 14, and he eventually came to the conclusion that she was a Munchausen syndrome by proxy sufferer. However, this doctor never informed the authorities of her situation. He expressed his opinion that there wasn't enough proof to take action in later interviews. Authorities received an anonymous report in 2009 claiming that Dee Dee's descriptions of Gypsy Rose's ailments lacked any basis in medicine. 2 caseworkers visited their home as a result, but Dee Dee persuaded them that there was nothing that she was doing that was wrong. Dee Dee started to lie about Gypsy Rose's age as she got older, even going so far as to change the dates on Gypsy's birth certificate to make her daughter appear younger. Gypsy, however, continued to be challenging for Dee Dee to manage. She attempted to run away in 2011 by traveling with a man that she had met at a science fiction convention, but Dee Dee quickly located them thanks to their common friends. Despite being 19 years old at the time, she convinced the man that Gypsy was just a juvenile. Gypsy Rose claims that once they got home, Dee Dee broke her computer and tied her to the bed. Gypsy has also claimed that her mother occasionally withheld food and would slap her. Gypsy Rose eventually succeeded in reconnecting online. She signed up for a Christian dating site where she met a man named Nicholas Godejohn. After telling him all about what her mother has been doing to her since she was born, she begged him to kill Dee Dee. She told him it was the only way that they would ever be together. Nicholas traveled to Dee Dee and Gypsy Rose's home in June of 2015, and while Gypsy waited in the bathroom with her hands over her ears so that she wouldn't hear her mother's screams, he repeatedly stabbed Dee Dee to death. Nicholas and Gypsy went back to his house in Wisconsin, where they were eventually discovered by the police. How'd they get caught? Great question, I'd love to tell you. Gypsy went on Facebook and posted that her mother was dead. It wasn't sad or compassionate. She referred to her mother as the B word and used exclamations. Like she was excited about it. So excited that she posted a couple of times about it. Later, Gypsy Rose claimed that there was a very good explanation for the messages that she had written on Facebook. It was in order for others to go and find her mother's dead body. Many people who had known Gypsy after Dee Dee's murder questioned why she had gone so far as to kill her. She might have easily exposed Dee Dee's lies by standing up from her wheelchair in front of everyone, since she was capable of standing and walking. Gypsy, however, had been raised to believe that no one would accept her story. She clarified, quote, "I was terrified and unsure of what my mother would do, so I couldn't just get out of the wheelchair. I didn't have anyone I could rely on." The truth was that Gypsy had lived under her mother's authority and supervision her entire childhood. She was also prohibited from attending school. Despite Gypsy having a normal IQ, Dee Dee claimed her daughter had the mental age of 7. Dee Dee always held Gypsy's hand while they were out in public, squeezing it when she wanted her daughter to stay quiet. In reference to Gypsy's life and deeds, Dr. Mark Fieldman, a specialist in Munchausen syndrome through proxy, stated that the control was complete in the same way that a kidnapped victim's control can occasionally be complete. Her daughter was essentially taken hostage, and I believe we can explain the crime that followed in the term of a hostage attempting to flee. Gypsy's attorney was able to negotiate a plea agreement for the charges she faced because Gypsy's medical records showed the abuse that she had endured. In 2016, Gypsy pled guilty to second-degree murder. She received a 10-year prison term. Starting in 2024, she will be eligible for parole. Nicholas Godejohn was given a life sentence after being found guilty of first-degree murder in 2018. According to Gypsy Rose, she didn't fully understand the extent of her mother's deceit until after Dee Dee had passed away. Gypsy believed that she actually had leukemia, even though she knew that she could walk and eat normal food. Gypsy is currently very much healthy. She also has claimed that her freedom in prison is greater than she had in the home that she shared with her mother. She said, quote, "I'm delighted that I'm out of that environment, but I am not happy that she's dead."